Have you ever stopped to think about how one single event, just one moment, can completely change, well, everything? How a tremor on one side of the world can create a tidal wave on the other? Well, today, we're going to trace the aftershocks of a crisis that did exactly that.
And this image, it's the perfect metaphor, right? The domino effect. One little push and you get this cascade of consequences that you just can't stop. Each one topples the next, and before you know it, the entire landscape looks different. That is precisely what happened to our world.
So that brings us to the big question we're tackling today. How on earth did a financial meltdown, one that seemed to start in just one country, set off a chain reaction that is still fundamentally changing global trade, technology, and power politics as we speak? Let's dig in. Okay, so to really get a grip on the impact, we first have to rewind the clock. We have to understand what the world looked like before the first domino fell. It was an era that was defined by a very powerful and very optimistic idea. People called it hyper-globalization. After the Cold War ended, it really felt like the world was shrinking, becoming flatter. The thinking was, led by the US, that money, markets, and technology could flow across borders with almost no friction. It honestly felt unstoppable.
And then 2008 happened. That's when the first domino was pushed over. A massive financial crisis, born out of the US housing market, sent a shockwave through the entire system. But here's the thing about a hyper-connected world. No crisis ever stays local for long.
And that's not just an abstract idea. The European Parliament put it perfectly. Confidence just evaporated. The very interconnectedness that had made the boom so big was now spreading the panic at lightning speed. The crisis leaped across the Atlantic and slammed into Europe hard. And the fallout, it was just devastating. This wasn't just about numbers on a screen. Investment just fell off a cliff. Millions of people lost their jobs. A whole new group of people, the working poor, emerged. And all that economic pain, it turned into political anger, shaking up traditional parties and creating this huge backlash against the very idea of globalization that people felt had let them down.
So all this anger and frustration didn't just shake up elections, it actually started to change the very architecture of the global economy. The era of hyperspeed integration was over. Something totally new was beginning to take its place.
And of course, economists came up with a name for it: globalization. It's exactly what it sounds like. That breakneck expansion of trade and investment that had defined the world for decades, it hit a wall. The world wasn't totally disconnecting, but the pace of everything was slowing way, way down.
I mean, just look at this chart. It captures the moment perfectly. You see that peak right before the crisis, and then it just flatlines. For the first time in over 150 years, the engine of global trade and finance basically sputtered and stalled out. It's pretty incredible to see it visually like that.
But here's the real twist in the story. This wasn't the death of globalization. Not at all. It was more like a mutation. While the old way of connecting the world was slowing down, a whole new way was just getting started.
And this slide shows you exactly what happened. As the world of physical stuff, shipping containers and cargo planes, flatlined, the digital world went vertical. The flow of data across borders absolutely exploded. So globalization was becoming less about things and more about information. And that was a huge deal, because it meant economic power was now all about controlling data. Okay, so you have this new reality. The global economy is shaky, people are anxious, and the real power is shifting to the digital world. Well, that created a brand new kind of tension, turning old partners into new rivals and setting the stage for a major showdown over technology itself.
And this is really the key. There was a massive psychological shift, especially in the US. This idea of techno-nationalism really took hold. The view of China completely pivoted. It went from being a partner in this great global project to being seen as a strategic competitor, one that was using America's own open system to get ahead.
And this kicked off a huge debate in Washington that's still raging today. On one side, you have the restrictionists, who basically see it as a zero-sum game. If China wins, the US loses, so you have to cut them off. But on the other side, you have the cooperationists, who are worried that freaking out and cutting all ties is an overreaction that's going to end up hurting America more than it helps. And let me be clear, this wasn't just a debate. The restrictionist view led to real, concrete actions. The list of Chinese companies banned from buying US tech quadrupled. Visas for Chinese researchers were pulled. Major telecom licenses were revoked.
The US government even banned its own people from using things like Chinese-made drones. The Great Decoupling was officially underway.
All right, so while the Western-led order is showing all these cracks, the US and China are pulling apart, Europe is still recovering, another set of dominoes started to fall. A group of major non-Western countries saw a huge opening to step up and start building their own system.
And that brings us to the BRICS bloc. You've probably heard of them. Originally Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Their mission was pretty straightforward. Create an alternative to a global system they felt was totally dominated by the US and its allies and give a bigger voice to the rest of the world.
And just recently, this bloc got a whole lot bigger. I mean, they went through a massive expansion, bringing in some seriously heavy hitters from the Middle East and Africa. We're talking energy superpowers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, plus major regional players like Iran and Egypt.
And with that expansion comes some serious weight. Let's just pause and absorb these numbers. The expanded BRICS now represents almost half the people on the planet, over a quarter of the entire global economy, and get this, a mind-boggling 42% of all global oil production. This is a group with some serious leverage.
And it's really important to get this. They aren't just a talking club. They are actively building their own institutions, like the New Development Bank. And this isn't just about offering loans. It's about creating a whole separate financial system, one that's not dependent on the US dollar, to challenge the economic order that's been in place since World War II.
Which brings us right back to where we started. All of these dominoes, the end of that hyper-globalized dream, the tech rivalry between the US and China, the rise of this powerful new BRICS bloc, every single one was set in motion by that one crisis back in 2008. So as the old world continues to fracture, what comes next? Are we heading for a new, more dangerous Cold War? Or is this the messy, complicated birth of a new balance of power?